We often praise people for being incredibly independent and never needing help. But psychology shows that extreme self-reliance is often a survival response to neglect. 1. You develop a hyper-independent shield. Cognitive psychology calls this compulsive self-reliance. You essentially stop viewing other people as reliable resources for your needs. When you grow up emotionally alone, your brain learns that asking is useless. You internalize the belief that you are the only person you can count on. You might struggle with a massive work project entirely by yourself. You politely decline help from colleagues because admitting need feels dangerous. In relationships, you might refuse help with even the smallest daily chores. This leads to a life of constant exhaustion and profound emotional isolation. You push people away because you view every offer of support as a threat. To your brain, being helped feels like losing control. You would rather burn out than risk becoming vulnerable to disappointment. You feel like you have to do everything yourself just to feel safe. You might be carrying a weight that was never meant for one person. This habit protects you from being let down, but it also keeps you lonely. This isn't just about tasks, it actually changes how you read other people. You might think you are just a naturally observant or deeply considerate person. 2. Emotional radar overload. Psychology calls this hypervigilance, an enhanced state of sensory sensitivity. Growing up emotionally alone means you couldn't rely on consistent care to stay safe. You had to become an expert at reading others. You learned to track the tiniest shifts in the moods around you. This survival strategy helps you predict frustration or abandonment early. If you can sense a storm coming, you can try to stop it. Imagine entering a room and sensing a slight tension in a friend's voice. They might just be tired, but your brain goes into immediate overdrive. You spend the rest of the night wondering what you did wrong. You replay every word, looking for a mistake you might have missed. You are trying to solve a problem that might not even exist. You are now constantly scanning the horizon for signs of trouble. This habit drains massive amounts of mental and emotional energy. Monitoring others makes it easy to neglect your own feelings. It becomes difficult to know what you actually want in the moment. You might forget that your own needs are allowed to exist. Hypervigilance often leads to chronic social anxiety and a fear of groups. Every interaction feels like a high-stakes performance you cannot fail. You find yourself exhausted after just a simple coffee date. It isn't that you hate people, it's just that your radar never stops. You process a million data points while others just relax. You work overtime to ensure everyone else feels comfortable. Notice how often you check for a change in someone's expression. That vigilance was your protector once, but now it is your prison. Healing requires learning to trust your own inner voice instead. You might think being easygoing is just a helpful personality trait. 3. The low-maintenance identity. Psychology calls this self-erasure, a survival tactic for kids in empty homes. When parents were emotionally unavailable, having needs felt like a burden, you learned that staying small was the safest way to exist. If you never asked for anything, you could never be rejected. This habit eventually turned into a deep belief about your own worth. In your daily life, this looks like never having a preference. When friends ask where to eat, you always say you don't care. You genuinely feel like your opinion isn't worth the space it takes up. You pride yourself on being the easiest person in the room to please. But this flexibility is often just a fear of being an inconvenience. You have trained yourself to be a ghost in your own relationships. The hidden cost of this habit is a profound sense of invisibility. Eventually, people around you will stop asking what you want. They assume you are fine with everything because you never say otherwise. You start to feel resentful that nobody truly knows the real you. Yet, you are the one holding the door to your inner world shut. You end up in one-sided dynamics where your needs simply don't exist. Think about the last time you swallowed a preference to keep peace. Does it feel like you are being polite, or are you just hiding? You might feel like you are protecting the relationship by staying quiet. In reality, you are preventing people from ever truly connecting with you. Being low maintenance doesn't make you easier to love, it makes you easier to miss. Notice if you feel a surge of guilt when you finally speak up. That guilt is a leftover echo from a home that couldn't hold space for you. Acknowledging your own presence is the first step toward real connection. Living in survival mode for too long can eventually lead to a total shutdown. 4. The emotional deep freeze. If your childhood home didn't mirror your feelings, you learn to disconnect. Psychology shows that we often numb our pain when no one is there to share it. Think of it as a mental circuit breaker that flips to off during high stress. Clinical psychology calls this pattern emotional detachment. It is a protective wall built to keep overwhelming loneliness from crushing you. In your daily life, this might look like a strange sense of boredom. You might reach a huge life milestone, but feel almost nothing at all. While others are cheering, you are simply wondering when you can go home. This pattern also shows up during heated arguments or difficult confrontations. When a partner is shouting, you might feel suddenly sleepy or calm. You aren't being cold on purpose. Your brain is just trying to protect you. The long-term consequence is a deep struggle with genuine intimacy. Real closeness requires vulnerability, which your brain views as dangerous. You might sabotage good relationships because they feel too intense. When someone gets too close, you subconsciously trigger the deep freeze. This eventually leaves you feeling like a ghost in your own life. You are physically there, but your true self is safely tucked away. Does it ever feel like you are watching your life through a thick window? You can see everything happening, but you can't quite feel the warmth. Notice if you tend to prioritize logic over feeling to avoid being hurt. That preference for facts was likely a childhood survival strategy. Healing begins by slowly thawing those parts of yourself you had to hide. It means learning that it is finally safe to feel again. You don't have to keep the circuit breaker off to be secure. Understanding this pattern is the first step toward letting people back in. Living with a constant sense of being a burden drains your energy every single day. 5. The guilt of existing. When your needs were not mirrored as a child, you learned that having them was a problem. Psychology calls this toxic shame, where you feel flawed at a core level just for being here. It is not that you did something wrong, but that your very presence feels like an inconvenience. You might find yourself apologizing to a waiter when they bring you the wrong meal. You may even feel deep panic when you simply have to call in sick to work. This habit forces you to play small and stay in relationships where your needs are ignored. You stop applying for better jobs because you do not want to bother the hiring manager. Ultimately, you spend your life trying to be as invisible and low maintenance as possible. You feel like you owe the world an explanation for simply taking up space. Notice how often you say sorry for things that are not actually your fault. That internal critic is actually just the voice of a home that never made room for you. Breaking this pattern starts with realizing that you are allowed to have requirements. When you stop apologizing for existing, you give others the chance to truly know you. The truth is, your presence is not a debt you need to pay back to anyone. Ultimately, your needs are not a burden. They are the bridge to genuine connection. By understanding these 5 traits, you can start the journey of reparenting your inner self. In the end, you were never the problem. You were just a child doing your best to survive. Remember, recognizing these patterns is the first step toward finally feeling at home in yourself.